We want to say good afternoon to everybody who is watching or participating, and to thank our witnesses for being here today. This is the subcommittee's first hearing of the 117th Congress. Before we get started, though, I'd like to take a minute to recognize and welcome Mr. Daniel Webster of Florida, who is the new ranking member of the subcommittee. Our subcommittee has the distinction of being the most productive of any of the subcommittees under transportation and infrastructure, and I look forward to working together with Mr. Webster to keep that record going as we advance policies and programs that safeguard the lives and livelihoods of the communities we serve. Today's hearing is entitled Building Smarter: The Benefits of Investing in Resilience and Mitigation. These are two intertwined topics that have enjoyed bipartisan attention and cooperation in the past. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is perhaps responsible for the most significant amount of dedicated funding for pre- and post-disaster mitigation, and it leads the whole of federal government strategy to build a more resilient nation. Ranking Member Webster is no stranger to these issues. As he noted to me, he previously worked in the Florida legislature to enact the state's updated building codes in 1996, following the devastating impacts of Hurricane Andrew. Those updated building codes are one example of a cost-effective mitigation strategy, and they've led to more resilient communities all across Florida. In insurance and emergency management circles, Florida's 2004 hurricane season is infamous for 4 major storms: Charley, Francis, Ivan, and Jean, that crisscrossed the state during a 6-week span, leaving virtually no square inch untouched. In the wake of those storms, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety conducted a study of residential construction, comparing homes built before and after the 1996 adoption of the bolstered codes to examine the impacts on insurance claims. The IBHS study found that homes constructed after the new codes saw 60% fewer claims, and those claims were 42% less costly than the homes constructed before the strengthened codes. Now, that's just one example, but we know that when homes, businesses, and other infrastructure are built stronger from the get-go or are built back stronger following disasters, they're less likely to be seriously damaged during future events. That ability to bounce back faster is a measure of their resilience. Unfortunately, as more American communities grapple with ever-increasingly severe natural hazards, we don't have to look hard to find examples of communities that we all represent that have been knocked down by recent disasters. Last month, for example, Texas Electric Utilities suffered a multi-day catastrophic failure resulting from an unusual deep freeze. Something similar had happened in 2011 and also in 1989, and one of the recommendations of the multiple after-action reviews in 2011 was for generating companies to invest in insulation for equipment and heaters or other technology that's commonly employed by their counterparts in areas more prone to cold weather. While the power generators are typically investor-owned utilities and ineligible for mitigation assistance from FEMA, their failure to invest in this type of mitigation led Governor Abbott to request a major disaster declaration for all 254 Texas counties to provide relief to the 4.5 million households that lost power and to the public buildings and other infrastructure damaged by the deep freeze. In a briefing for members of Congress and their staffs last month, the state's emergency manager, Chief Nim Kidd, estimated that the resulting damages experienced by public buildings, private businesses, and residents from last month's rolling blackouts from days-long power outages would likely result in the need for more federal disaster assistance, more than was allocated to respond and recover from 2018's Hurricane Harvey. And that was the state's costliest natural disaster up until that point. And it was reported on Tuesday that at least 57 Texans lost their lives as a result of severe winter weather, from hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning, medical equipment failure, falls, and car crashes. We haven't even touched now on the ever-increasing threat of wildfires across the West and the expansive risk to low-lying communities from rising tides or storm surges. The majority of the assistance FEMA provides in response to presidential disaster declarations funds the repair or replacement of infrastructure. In addition to this public assistance funding, the Stafford Act provides for 15% of eligible disaster costs to be sent to disaster impact states to be used in post-disaster mitigation projects. This is referred to as the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. These projects have provided a significant return on investment to the taxpayer. Depending on the type of project, the National Institute of Building Sciences has demonstrated between $4 and $11 in reduced disaster recovery costs resulting from federally funded mitigation projects. Let me repeat that, a savings of return between $4 and $11 depending on the project, and that's a key point for us to remember. In 2018, following significant analysis work by this subcommittee, Congress amended the Stafford Act with the passage of the Disaster Recovery Reform Act. For the first time, taking lessons learned from successful post-disaster mitigation programs, we decided that FEMA should have a similarly funded program. This program existed prior to the reform bill, but was consistently funded by our colleagues in appropriations. We thought we needed to take a closer look at this and found that the program should differ from the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program because it would be nationally competitive. For a state like Nevada, that can make a huge difference. We have 86% of our land owned by the federal government, so we don't get much disaster relief, so pre-disaster mitigation would be a game changer. FEMA's program is called BRIC, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Community. It's too soon to tell how effective BRIC is, but just to look at the figures, the first application cycle for $500 million drew applications totaling $3.6 billion. So obviously, there's a great demand. So we want to examine what works and what's flawed in FEMA's approach to mitigation and resilience, how the agency can further empower states, tribes, territories, and localities to better leverage this type of program. I look forward to all of our witnesses and our members' perspectives, working with Ranking Member Webster and our colleagues to advance future legislative efforts out of this committee to provide FEMA the resources and tools that it needs to make American communities more resilient, more resistant to predictable hazards. I thank you for your attention. And I now recognize Ranking Member Webster for his opening remarks. I'll ask unanimous consent before you begin, Mr. Webster, if you'll indulge me, unanimous consent to insert 2 items into the record. One is a statement from Bill Strong Coalition, which has been a leader on these issues. I believe a few of our witnesses today are actually members of Bill Strong. And also the committee's received a letter from the Smarter, Safer Coalition outlining its priorities in this space. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Webster?
Thank you, Chair Titus, for holding this hearing today. I really appreciate it. I'm thankful for the witnesses, including Mr. Falk, who is from Florida, representing the National Association of Home Builders. I'm pleased to serve as ranking member of this subcommittee. Look forward to working closely with the chair on issues critical to this subcommittee, including resiliency and mitigation, which are very important to Florida. So